It's time for another edition of Saturdays with Seniors, brought to you by FCCB's local branches in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg. Serve our community for over 150 years. Member FDIC. And our guest today, Roger Bunn, joining us. And hello, Roger.
Hello, Kevin.
Well, good morning, and thanks for joining us on Saturday with Seniors. People may know you as the county commissioner, but we're going to talk about what you did way before you were commissioner, your early days. You grew up in Tioga County, didn't you?
I did. I was born in Canton, and my parents moved to Blossburg when I was about a year old. So I spent my adolescence and my teens and all that kind of stuff in Blossburg.
So all your memories are pretty much of Blossburg, and you still are a resident of Blossburg now.
Yes, I went away for a few years and came back.
Military go away?
Military.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for your service. We'll get to that in a little bit, but let's go back to what year were you born? I can ask old area. Or you can answer the question if you want, but that's part of the show.
July 26, 1941.
1941. So tell me some of your earliest memories. You were in kindergarten in the mid-1940s, or maybe you didn't go to kindergarten, first grade. Maybe they started then?
Yeah, we didn't have kindergarten. We had first grade.
Where'd you go to school?
Blossburg Elementary.
That's not the same building that's there now then, was it?
Yes.
That building's that old?
Yes.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, yeah, that's where I went to.
Went to school there, and tell me about school. What was it like back then in Blossburg in the 40s going to school?
You know, I remember some of it. I remember sitting in the classroom, and I had a friend, his nickname was Judge, Ronald Hodder. He was a good friend. And he would sit there and write numbers, and I thought, I can do that. Why is that memory? I don't know. But we'd fill pages full of numbers.
I had a notebook where I tried to count from 1 to 1,000,000, writing all the numbers in it. I don't know why, as a kid. I just want to see how far I could get, writing 1, 2, 3.
Well, how far did you get?
I think I got to about 6,000 and realized this is going to take forever.
Take forever. Yeah, I may have got to 1,000.
Yeah.
Why do you think we did that?
I don't know. Well, this is before the days of calculator. I was in elementary school in the 70s, not the 40s, but not everybody had a calculator back then. So it was just, I don't know. Now you could just tell a printer, to just print sequential numbers. And
for sure.
I have no idea. So what are some of the other things you remember at school? Do you remember going on any field trips or anything, or places you went?
I remember school just before we get out for the year, and we would have a picnic over on the Island Park, which the Island Park is still the Island Park.
Yeah.
A few less trees and a few changes over there over the years, but yeah. Those picnics, they were class picnics.
So the whole class would come together to have some fun together with that stuff?
Well, it was all, I don't know, 40 of us or 30 of us. I'm not quite sure how many.
What did you like to do as a kid during your free time?
Well, I used to like to run through the woods. I was fortunate enough to have a father that took me hunting and fishing, and played a lot of softball. Yeah. But they played fast pitch back then, and I didn't have the hand-eye coordination to make the ball meet the bat.
Yeah, I was a wiffle ball player. That shows you where my hand coordination went to.
I was not the athlete of the class.
Yeah. So did you have a bicycle when you were a kid? Or
maybe you shouldn't go there.
Maybe I shouldn't go there. Okay.
No, but I had a little...
Those are the questions I like.
I had a little bicycle with hard rubber tires.
Yeah.
And then I got a hand-me-down. I had 3 older sisters. And I got a hand-me-down girl's bike with big balloon tires on it. But after a year or two, my dad finally got me I think it was a roll-fast bicycle. Yeah. Brand new.
Growing up, you lived right in town? You had all full amenities and everything in your house?
Well, we were very fortunate. We lived on South Williamson Road. If you went up Main Street, turned right, go across the bridge, we were, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 houses on the left past Water Street.
Yep.
And across the road, my father rented about an acre of land. So we planted, and Roger got to be the guy that hilled the potatoes and weeded. But I had the easy job. My sisters had to take the potatoes and whatever, put them in a wagon, and take them and sell them.
Oh, she was the salesperson.
2 of my sisters, I remember doing that. I don't know if all 3 of them had to do it or not.
You had to hand dig up these potatoes too? That was...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I was farmer as a kid.
Yeah, I got really handy at knocking the potato bugs off the leaves into we'd have a pie tin with kerosene in it and knock the potato bugs in it, and then my dad
And
burned.
You were, what, 7 years old at the time, or probably when you started?
Yeah, if that old.
Yeah, geez. Yeah. So kids back in the 40s all had chores to do, as opposed to now, not every kid has chores they have to do.
Yeah, mine essentially, I had 3 of them. On wash day, we had metal clotheslines, and it was my job to go out and clean that metal wash line off so that, they didn't get on the clothes. In the winter, I would take out the ashes. We had a coal furnace, and that was never an easy chore.
Yeah.
And then we burned a lot of our trash, and our neighbor, Jack Novakuski, had a burn barrel over there. My mother said, Roger, you got to take the trash out.
All right.
Okay, Mom.
Here's some matches, you 7-year-old. Go have fun.
Go have fun. Well, I almost burned a tree down when I was a kid.
In some ways, the world's a little safer now in a good way, but in other ways, that's maybe not always in a good way. But there's definitely a case. What did your parents do for work?
My mother would work babysitting, doing those kinds of things, and my father worked on the ovens in the foundry. He died when I was in the 10th grade. I was just turning 16, but he taught me how to drive before I was 16. And
you still have some good memories of your dad.
My dad was great. He like I say, he'd take me fishing, hunting. Yeah. I do remember one Saturday, it was a rainy day, and we planned on going fishing. And it was really a nasty day. And, I was, come on, Dad, let's go. Yeah, my mother finally said, Thurlow, will you take that boy fishing?
And he did.
He did.
Well, good. Yeah. So you were the man of the house at a pretty young age then when your dad passed away then, having sisters in the house?
Yeah, it was just my mother and I. The sister closest to me, my youngest sister, she had just gone to nursing school. And I was just finishing up the 10th grade. So it was just my mother and I.
Yeah.
And we moved into an apartment, 118 Main Street.
Yep. So you've always been in that same neighborhood of Blossburg.
Yeah, pretty much.
So at this point, when your dad passed away, you're 16. Did you get your license about this time period? And how did that go? And tell me about your first car. Well, what did your family drive before your first car?
Yeah. See, I got my license pretty much when I was 16. I had to come over here to the courthouse at the time.
Yeah.
Where I went in where the recorder of deeds, and that's where you took your test from there. And I passed it on the first try, by the way.
I wouldn't have doubted that.
We had it was the first and only new car that my father ever had. It was a 1955 Pontiac. It was two-tone green. Like I say, it was just my mother and I.
It was a big deal when he came home with a car then. It was like coming home with a new baby. The neighbors, all wanted to see your car, and it was...
Yeah, when everybody said, man, they'd shut the door. It's, man, it sounds real solid.
Yeah. It's probably was about an 8,000-pound car back then.
They were pretty big.
But the price tag wasn't so big. That was the nice part there.
Yeah.
Take a second.
But relative to that, my dad had kept a diary up until almost the time he died. But he made on an average maybe $16 a day.
Which I think was pretty good money then.
Yeah.
Working at the foundry.
He raised the family,
Yeah.
My first car, I was in the Navy before I got my own car. And I have to say, my mother bought it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mom. It was a 1955 Plymouth.
With a few miles on it?
Yeah, but it was a good car.
Yeah, my first car was $600.
Well, and that's what this one cost. Was
okay,
$600.
Well, then it was a really good car if you had a same price car as me back when...
Yeah.
When some people were making $1 a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or $2 a day back then, probably.
Yeah. Not much.
No. So, high school, you graduated high school and then went to the military? Is that sort of what happened? Or was the order different?
My mother encouraged me I needed to move on, and I graduated from high school. 2 weeks later, I was in the Navy.
Just that quick?
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
It worked out good. I went in what they called a kiddie cruise. If you went in before your 18th birthday, you would get out on your 21st birthday. So on my first tour, I was only in about 3 years. Well, I couldn't wait to get out and come back home.
A little homesick.
Yeah. I mean, I really missed Blossburg and Tioga County.
Yeah.
And by the way, even back then, there was more than just your hometown. I remember coming to the Laurel festivals and the events. And I remember going to the fairs in Mansfield.
The great Mansfield Fair.
Yeah. All those folks had, they had families, the Carneys. Yeah. And every year I'd make a friend and hang out for however long they were there. You'd get special treatments and, if you knew somebody.
Yeah. Well, that was a very popular fair. The train actually stopped for that fair. They had a siding over there. And, like 8,000 people came one day, record attendance one day.
Yeah.
So, pretty amazing fair. What else do you remember about Blossburg as a kid? Tell me about, or not a kid, but your earlier years, high school years. Was there a hangout spot? Did people cruise the strip in Blossburg or in Mansfield?
We did cruise a lot. My mother didn't let me have the car. Well, I was only 16, but she wasn't going to let me have that car. So I had a friend that had a car.
Yeah.
So we cruised a lot, but the Maple Cross Dairy store there, it was a soda fountain.
Yeah.
They had, it's where the farmer's table is now.
So that was a farmer's table. Now is a soda fountain with the whole soda jerk guy working. Not that he's an idiot, but you jerk mean that was the old term.
Right.
The guy mixed the phosphates and all that.
Yeah.
Malt. I didn't know
the
that.
best hot fudge sundaes in Tioga County.
Wow.
But they had booths, you know, and each booth had a jukebox where you could put in probably a nickel back then. I don't know for sure. And then in the back there was a phone booth back there. But then across the street there was a bowling alley, Dem Shacks, I think it was.
Is that what got lost in the fire? Some of the buildings that got because now when you look across the street, you got the plaza from the old bank building and the borough building.
Yeah,
it's all been replaced.
Across the street there was a bowling alley, there was a drugstore. You know, that whole side of Main Street was businesses.
Do you remember that fire? And I don't know what year that was.
No, I was in the Navy when that happened.
You came back and it was one whole side of town was missing.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Did anybody lose their life in that fire, or was it more loss of property, or you don't have? I
don't know.
We're going back a long time ago in your memory here.
Well, but see, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know if you heard the news after. If we can be living in town, a fire that big, I'm sure it was talked about for a long time after.
Oh yeah.
So you went bowling. Tell me about the bowling alley. Was there?
I used to set pins there.
You were a pin boy.
Yeah.
They put a nickel in the ball and roll it down to you for your tip there, or your dollar in the.
Well, we used to get a little bit of a tip. I forget what it wasn't much.
Yeah.
And you know, when you were setting pins for league bowling, I mean, some of those guys really slung that ball down there.
Yeah.
And probably OSHA wouldn't let you do that now.
You sat right above the pins, right?
You sat right there.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes pins would come flying out of there. One of my fingers, it's still a little bit of a scar there. You know, you have your hands on the edge, and it just smashed that finger.
You don't have any marks left from your deployment for 3 years in the military, but you do have from being a pin boy.
Setting pins, yeah. But then I got out of the Navy. I was out about 18 months, and I worked a couple different jobs. I worked for Mika Construction. They had an excavating company. When I worked for them, they were tearing down homes and cutting down trees and what have you to where they built the dorms for the Mansfield College that they just tore down.
So you take it away and put it back.
Yeah, that was in 1962. But after about 18 months, I worked for them. I worked for Dairy Lead, delivering milk, residential and commercial. And then I worked in a foundry for about 6 months, worked nights, came home one night and told my wife, I'm going back in the Navy tomorrow.
It's always been hard work at the foundry, but I can imagine then it was...
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I admire anybody that's put their time in the foundry, and I've had the honor or the privilege of touring the foundry a couple times as a county commissioner, and it's changed a lot, but it's still work.
Yep, still good, honest work, work day that you put in there.
Yes.
And back then, a lot of people either worked in the foundry or in the coal mines, right? That was, I'm guessing, 2/3 or more of the jobs were related to one or the other.
Yeah, well, you took me back when you said the coal mines. It was before my father died, so I would have been 14, 15. I worked for Raymond and Keith Lindy. They contracted a few residentials, but mostly hospitals and post offices in New York State. So in the summertime, what we would do is fill those basements full of coal. Mm-hmm. And when the first couple loads you put in there, you know, it just went in. Well, when it starts piling up at that one place where they're putting it in, you had to go down there, and we just called pulling it back.
Yeah.
So you had to pull back. And I think those trucks had about 6 ton. You had to pull back all 6 ton of that coal.
A pile of rocks looks easy to move, but it's gravel or anything is not easy.
We would get $2 a trip. Sometimes you come out of that basement, all you could see was eyeballs and teeth. It was just... Yeah, but you'd just be covered.
Again, OSHA probably wouldn't allow that.
OSHA wouldn't like that? No, they wouldn't.
So you worked for Keith Lindy. I wish I had a chance to interview him on this program.
Oh, that would have...
I've always admired Keith Lindy for the years that I knew him, and his history that he collected and his love of Blossburg, and still honored with the hay rides every year, which I think is awesome. He was just always a smile on his face, nice to everybody.
To me, he's still a young man. Mm-hmm. I can picture him jumping up on that truck. I mean, he was as spry. We'd be riding along, and he would need to do something, and he would say, here, kid, you take the wheel.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting over there. We had 6 ton of coal, and I'm sort of hanging onto the steering wheel, keeping us between the lines.
Probably no power brakes.
I heard some good war stories from him. See, he was with Patton's Third Army, and he was in an anti-tank group. Very interesting.
Yeah. Wow, I really wish I had a chance to interview him. Another one, Benny Taka, who lived in Blossburg, that I don't know how long ago he passed away, but the stories and how far he'd walk and all those things that, digging out basements, he was amazing. Blossburg's had some amazing people in it over the years.
Yeah.
So was there a pool in Blossburg when you were a kid?
Yeah, it was in the river.
The river, is that where everyone swam?
Well, we had a couple pools up on the Tioga, but then the river that comes down behind the one foundry. If you go in the Island Park and go all the way down to the end and keep going, there's that stream that comes in.
Yeah, Y that comes together of streams there at the end.
Okay, well, that right there, they had a dam that they put in there. They built a spillway and everything. It was a swimming pool. I remember walking on those rocks. Oh, man.
Well, again, OSHA wouldn't like it, but it was the simple way to do it. You didn't have chemicals to deal with. No. Well, maybe you did from the old days coming down the river, but you didn't have chemicals to deal with as far as chlorine.
Well, but in the river, we were further on up.
Yeah.
There were two places up there. I forget. One of them was called Pirates Rock, and I heard somebody mention that.
That still kind of exists as a popular place to visit.
There was another one if you're going out the Ogdensburg Road.
Yeah.
Before you would turn to go up to the Pirates Rock, there was another one off to the left, and I couldn't take you to it today.
Okay.
But that was a pretty good place.
Yeah. So did you get out like to Arnott and Morris Run much, and tell me what they were like then? Because Arnott's changed over the years.
Arnott there were a couple kids in my class from Arnott and Morris Run.
Yeah, Arnott had its own elementary school.
Yeah, but I don't know when they came to Blossburg. But what I remember, they were there.
Frank Youngworth was on with us with Saturday with Seniors. Okay. He had 4 in his class in the Arnott School, lived up on Maple Hill.
Okay.
Now, he had no utilities at all, living a few miles out of town. You had the luxury of living in town and having the utilities and going to the big school in Blossburg.
Yeah, indoor plumbing. Yeah, we had all that.
Yeah.
All those luxury. Morris Run was, the
mining was still going on, right? So there was a lot more activity, obviously, with...
And Kaminsky was still doing mining. Mm-hmm. When I left, they hadn't really got into the strip mining yet. Mm-hmm. So they were still doing mining.
Underground mining. Yeah. Amazing that there are people that live that life that are still alive now that, that's not that long ago. Any other memories? Did you go to Putnam Park ever? Was that still a park then? Birdland? Did you make it up there?
No.
Somewhere back in that time, there was a little bit of amusement park there.
Yes, there was.
A couple rides, but all I know is somewhere in that time.
Yeah, I think you need to get somebody a little older than me.
Well, actually, Grover Cleveland's, I think, got a few years on you, and he still had some memories of it being there, but yeah.
Blossburg was a great place to be raised. I mean,
it still is. I love Blossburg. It's really a neat, walkable town. You can live there. Your kids can walk to school. You got the park, the pool. The new walking path, I think, is beautiful. And the town is doing great.
It is. And I'll give a shout out to the mayor and the council for what they do. They face issues head on and they address the issues.
Absolutely.
And we have a great town manager. George, don't listen. He does a great job.
Right, there's quite a few people that really put their heart and soul into the town and make it happen. So the Blossburg Hospital, that was open when you were a kid. Were you born there? Did you ever go there for any of your treatments?
No, I was born in a house in Canton where the high school sits.
That's right. You were at first year in Canton, yeah.
I had my tonsils taken out in Blossburg Hospital when I was a senior. Mm-hmm. I was in the hospital about 2 weeks to get my tonsils out. I was a sick puppy. My sister was a nurse up there for years.
Yeah. So tell me about when was the first time you traveled far from home besides military? Did you ever fly in a plane when you were a kid, or take a train ride anywhere when you were a kid, hop a boxcar to get to Mansfield when you were a kid?
None of that. The first plane ride I got was going to boot camp in the Navy. And whoa, this is something.
You're off the ground here, a whole new concept.
Yeah. My father had connections in Florida, and when they were first married, they would drive to Florida. And the only paved roads they would have would be in towns. It would take them 2 weeks to go to Florida.
Wow.
But then they lived there for a while during the Depression. Mm-hmm. My uncle had a job at a dairy farm. He talked my father into going down there. So we would go to Florida. I guess probably the last time I went as a family, I might have been maybe 12.
Yeah.
We drove to Miami. Yeah. So his brother was still living in Miami. And he had a sister that lived in Texas. Yeah. And so 1 year we went to Florida and then to Texas. I want to say it was a 1941 or a 47 Ford.
Texas in that.
Yeah.
Wow.
A family of 5. Think of that.
No seatbelts in the back seat. Yeah, just pile in there.
3 girls. Yeah. Me, my mother, and my father, and a dog. and we went to Florida and Texas and back.
Unbelievable.
When I think about that, I don't know how they did it.
People weren't afraid of adventure, I guess, back then.
I can remember standing in the back behind my father.
Yeah.
Looking. I remember crossing the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
It just, some of the experience, like I say, I had great parents that really loved their children.
So how often did you get out of Blossburg to go shopping? Did you ever go to like the big cities of Elmira or Williamsport? I guess in Blossburg it was kind of probably about equal distance to either.
Yeah, it was. And we used to go to, my father, I think he got paid every 2 weeks. And we would go to Williamsport shopping. And there was no interstate then. There was no 4-lane highways. And invariably going up Bloss Mountain, either direction, you were behind a truck. And you just better sit back, and it's what it's going to be. You're going to follow that truck. But, you know, it's funny the things you remember. I had never really heard about pizza, so we were in Williamsport.
I always think it was pizza as one of the most popular foods, but it wasn't as popular when you were... Yeah.
So we're in Williamsport, and I guess it was my father bought this pizza. Well, back then the cars had a shelf up in the back behind the back seat, and there was this pizza.
A back dashboard kind of.
Yeah. Well, we made, I wouldn't call it an emergency stop, but we made a pretty big stop, and they weren't packaged like they are today. So us in the back seat got our pizza early. That was my introduction to pizza.
That kind of a brake check kind of stop. My dad used to call us brake checks. You slam on the brakes and your head would hit into the...
Yeah, those shopping trips were great. There again, I don't know what store it was, but there weren't any cash registers. And they had all these rails, as I remember them, with little metal carts on them that you would buy something, the counter person would take your money, put it in that thing, and you'd see the cart go upstairs, and then it would come back down with your change.
Huh.
It was the strangest thing. Yeah.
Some guy up there with lots of change.
Yeah, somebody up there had a lot of money.
And somebody had a lot of strength to carry the change up to that guy because it was probably gravity fed, so it had to go up.
No, this thing was, I think it was somehow powered.
Pneumatically?
Yeah, I have no idea, but I remember those, it was like a little cart on rails.
Yeah, that's neat.
It is.
Interesting memories.
And I would say that if anybody hears this and remembers that, call Roger at the courthouse.
All right,
to know.
You need some more information on that system there.
How did that system work?
Well, you've been county commissioner now for how many years?
11 years.
How many more you got in you?
13 and a half months left. I'm not going to run again.
No.
This is my official announcement.
I'm not running again. Saturday with Seniors, your official announcement.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you for your service as a commissioner and in the military and to the community and everything you've done over all those years.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Yes. Great. Thanks for sharing your life with us here. It's been Saturday with Seniors. And by the way, you can hear this edition. Make sure you tell your family in Florida. They can go on to youtube.com and go to KC101 Hometown Country. You'll see our whole channel. And we have all the guests that have been on Saturday with Seniors. And there's almost 50 of them on there that you can hear the story of on our YouTube channel or go through our website. All brought to you by FCCB's local offices in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, serving our community for over 150 years. Member FDIC.